Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for the month of May 2019. So, this is the horoscope Sun and Rising for Tauruses. All right, let's take a look. So, the first 10 days of the month of May are bananas. There is a whole lot going on. I'm going to try and do it one at a time and just sort of show you it, but I warn you in advance, there's a lot to synthesize here. So let's just talk about what's happening at the start of the month. Mercury is making a square to Saturn, the South Node, and Pluto from the 12th house in Aries to the 9th house in Capricorn, while also making a sextile and mutual reception to Mars in the 2nd house in Gemini, while also making a trine to Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius in your 8th house. That's just the first 3 days of the month. Like all of that's happening. So Mercury is a major player at the beginning of the month. Now we're trying to synthesize Mercury with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other points in 3 other houses, right? So that's a lot. So I'm going to keep things a little simple. Mercury has to do with the mind. It's also, in this case, in mutual reception with Mars in your 2nd house, has a lot to do with money and finances. There is something happening here around money and finances, may also be tied into a spouse or partner's money or finances, but it also has something to do with a philosophical or spiritual change or issues of ethics or issues about what higher guidelines or principles you adhere to or that you allow to govern your life or guide you along the path, and how those things influence money and finances. It has the feeling like some kind of philosophical shift around money, or the potential for there to be a new strategy in finances or money, but I'm worried about there being excessive risks involved. And I'm also worried about there being overly rigid thinking that could be self-destructive, or being hell-bent on doing something or making some kind of investment or move financially that is, again, just too impulsive or reckless. The other thing that I'm thinking about is changes in not only financial philosophy, but just your relationship to material things in general. It's a natural time where you could be having a deeper philosophical change of mind. You could be looking for more discipline with regard to lifestyle, food, diet, spending, whatever, and possibly find that you're setting up some kind of regiment or some kind of system or some way of holding yourself accountable. You could be shoring up your resources, tightening the budget, etc. And that might be a good thing. It wouldn't be a surprise if you were working through different kinds of doubts or philosophical or ethical issues around this time. And maybe also dealing with, having to deal with some kind of higher authority, like, for example, having to pay an attorney or having to pay a lawyer, or that's the same thing, sorry, having to pay an attorney or having to pay taxes or some kind of fee or something like that, issues around loans and debts, and as well as just deeper philosophical issues or doubts that you're coming to terms with somehow, or that you're struggling with, trying to analyze something that comes to mind at the very beginning of the month. But there's so much more happening at the beginning of the month. For example, on May 4th, there is a new moon in your home sign. Typically that means that it's a pretty big month, very personal month for you. Sometimes there's a lot of physical healing or growth because this is happening in your home sign, 1st house. That's usually related to your physical bodily karma. So potential for developments around body, health, self-appearance or image, sometimes wardrobe appearance, things like that. But also new beginnings, starting something new, a new project or a new beginning this month. Starting fresh somehow, that comes to mind. Now, when you go forward to May 5th to May 6th, then you're getting in on a Mars-Jupiter opposition between the 2nd and 8th house. Has the feel of, more money, more problems, more expenses, more income, kind of a little bit of both. Mars in the 2nd in Gemini can be a lot of income from a lot of different places or streams of revenue. It can also be a lot of expenses. Jupiter can be a big debt or a big loan. But this, a little bit of a bravado, machismo, maybe some degree of conflict or tension around money or finances around this time, again, May 5th and May 6th, but also the potential for growth, hard work, and again, some kind of financial philosophy change or something like that, some kind of evaluation related to finances perhaps, or investments. So May 7th to May 8th, you're going to see Mercury and Uranus conjoining in your first house. This has the moment to really be like an aha moment, some kind of epiphany that's very personal, a new technology, a new mental breakthrough, learning something new, expressing yourself in a provocative way, verbally. Maybe be a little bit careful of that with Venus in the 12th house, could be a little self-destructive. So be careful about any kind of personal change that you feel like really flaunting, or anything you feel like saying that's kind of more provocative. May not go over as well as you hope that it will, with ruling planet Venus in the 12th house in her exile in Aries. Now, when you get to May 10th to the 15th, you're going from the Sun in Taurus through trines to Saturn, South Node, and Pluto in the 9th house in Capricorn. There's a grand Earth trine from Moon in Virgo on the 14th. I'll see if I can bring that up so you can actually see it. Kind of neat to see. So there we go. It gets in on the 14th. Very productive period with a grand Earth trine. 1st, 5th, and 9th houses. You're really sort of aligning yourself with your higher principles. 9th house, very personally productive. 1st house, 5th house, potential to be very creative. It's very earthy. But I think also very productive. You are going through some kind of revision or transformation of your life based on 9th house matters: philosophy, spirituality, religion, beliefs, higher authorities, stuff like that. So there is some kind of deeper philosophical change happening here. And I think this has the potential to be a moment of greater productivity related to some kind of change that you're going through mentally, intellectually, philosophically, or spiritually. But the other thing I want to say about this one is that I feel like the potential to start embodying some kind of philosophical change is possible. It's as though there's more resources or support available to enact something during this time. And that's the 10th to the 15th. And I already mentioned, that there's another thing that's happening. If you back up just a little bit, I almost skipped over it. The 6th to the 10th, Venus in your 12th house will also go through squares to Saturn, South Node, Pluto in the 9th house. Same thing that Mercury did earlier. Again, I think there's deeper issues with Venus here. It's a month where exploring doubts and working through some sort of philosophically contractive period in the 9th house. And then I think the energy really, it turns around a little later in the month. At the beginning of the month, I feel like the wheels are really turning and are kind of, it might be a little bit more introspective, or a time of a little bit more angst mentally. And then I think things shift once that grand Earth trine starts coming through the 10th to the 15th. Now, going forward, Mars or Venus will enter Taurus around the 15th, and that's good because that's your home planet coming into your home sign. Should be feeling really nice. At that point, I think that's when the tide really starts to shift, right about mid-month. Then what happens is around the 18th, we get a full moon in Scorpio in the 7th house of relationships. Now there's some kind of polarizing tension coming from the house of relationships, marriage, love. With the ruler of that full moon, Mars, having entered its fall in your 3rd house, it's possible that you see some difficult developments if you have siblings, or possibly more difficult communication dynamics in your relationships, a little bit more of a time that is more challenging or difficult for a spouse or their family. It would not surprise me at all if you're married or in a relationship to have your partner be going through a difficult time in their family life, or with their siblings or their parents or something like that. but I think it also just has a more emotionally vulnerable and sort of intense flavor to it. So this full moon's not really messing around. Expect a little bit more drama in relationships at that time. You can see the same thing from Venus, your ruling planet hitting Uranus in the first. There's some kind of unexpected change, maybe very liberating. The desire for greater freedom, self-expression, that's also very strong at this time. If you're in a relationship that's on the rocks, this could be a pretty destabilizing time for relationships that are suffering or struggling, maybe even the kind of moment that calls for a breakup. But I think if you're in a solid relationship, then I would look at this as a time of, sometimes when you are personally thriving or having, a moment of greater freedom or success or something like that, and then a partner goes through something that's a little bit more difficult, or a partner, sometimes it's hard for our partners to change as something positive is happening for us. A partner may feel threatened, but relationship dynamics are very interesting around the full moon. Whichever way you slice it, it's the same feeling I think is there, which is that there's a feeling of personal breakthrough with Venus Uranus in the first, coupled with a heavier, more challenging emotional dynamic in relationships, or possibly family life, siblings, maybe spouse or partner's family, stuff like that. So then we go on to, that's the full moon. Then on May 23rd, then you're going to see, back up a little bit, on May 23rd, Mars in Cancer in the third house will square Chiron in Aries. I think this has the potential to be very healing. So I think this is kind of like the Band-Aid that comes after the full moon. It might involve also ripping off an old Band-Aid in order to get in, re-clean a wound and redress it. There may be, again, a little bit more vulnerable, painful emotional dynamic around this time. But I think that there is great healing that comes through at the same time right after the full moon when Mars hits the square to Chiron. And then finally, at the very end of the month, something that, another big like flurry of transits to end the month, you've got Mercury in your second house of finances opposing Jupiter in your eighth house, while T-squaring Neptune in your 11th. I accidentally read this interpretation for my Aries people on accident, and then I had to change it. But this is for Tauruses. Your Mercury dynamic in the second house here is, again, it's about some kind of emphasis on money and finances, with Jupiter in the eighth house opposing it, the house of other people's money or resources. If you're in a relationship, it would not be surprising to see some philosophical exchange or different ways of thinking about money and finances, or work and business. You could also be really weighing what kinds of resources or dependencies are healthy in your life and which are unhealthy. So, just looking at money, finances, and resources. Those resources, friends, allies, sources of income that are healthy and positive, those that are too draining, to take too much from you, don't give enough in return. I think you'll be sorting things out along those lines at the very end of the month. I think it has the potential to be very magical and sort of, I think there could be some very big blessings that come through this end of the month period as well. Some sort of shift financially that is ultimately very beneficial. But it may also involve a new form of support coming in while an old form is leaving, and sort of that transition may not be entirely easy. So that's what I've got for you this month, Tauruses. I hope this was interesting. As always, I hope you have a great month. Please feel free to leave your stories or feedback in the YouTube feed. And I hope you have a great month of May, and I look forward to seeing you again in June. Okay, take care. Bye.